We're shown as live.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Caroline. Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to this meeting of the Corporate Parenting Board. It's very good to see everyone, and I would like to welcome 3 people who haven't attended these meetings before, and I'd like them just to give a little introduction, introduce themselves with a little bit of background. So the first person is Jennifer Rowan, who is the head of the fostering team service. Thank you, Jennifer, for your attendance. Would you like to give us a little update of your role, please?
Hiya, I'm Jenny Rowan. As introduced, I am the team manager of the fostering service. The remit of our service currently is the recruitment and retention of mainstream foster carers for Middlesbrough Council, supported lodging, so the assessment and retention and support of supported lodgings, in addition to the assessment of connected carers. So from the point of assessment through to approval at family placement panel and thereafter until permanency is secured for children via legal orders. I started in post in March of this year, and I have to say I feel really privileged to be part of a really vibrant team whereby we're really embracing a learning culture, and we're absolutely on a learning journey in terms of improvement. There are some really good things that are going on in the service. There are some significant areas for development. However, I hope alongside local authority and foster carers that we can continue to have children central to all of our decision making in that improvement journey.
Thank you, Jenny. That's really interesting. It's really good that you can be here. Another person whose first meeting it is Deb Fenney, who is Detective Chief Inspector. Could you introduce yourself, please, Deb?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Deb Fenney. I'm the Detective Chief Inspector in Cleveland Police, one of 4 within the Safeguarding Department. My primary role or my leads are around children and adults, albeit we do have other areas that support in the child element in exploitation. I've been enrolled now in this current one since January. However, prior to that, I was the Detective Inspector for the same area, so I do have a background in safeguarding and a background in the children's world. I'm very excited to be here and contribute what I can from a police perspective, but also to take what I can from you good selves back to our organisation to improve our services there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your attendance. Much appreciated. And the third person is Laurie Hunter. Laurie, could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Yeah, of course. So I'm here on behalf of the NYPs, but unfortunately today they're not able to make it because they're starting school and college again. So our all participation officer, Beth, has now left. So it's going to be me and Beth Bradshaw who are now going to be assisting the NYPs in the work that they're doing. So I'm an apprentice in the participation team, and yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you. Teresa, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. Can you explain the MYPs to for people who don't know what it means, particularly the people who are watching this, please?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So the MYPs are members of Youth Parliament. So what basically there was kind of an election that happened in schools, and 2 people were chosen. So we have our deputy and our member of Youth Parliament, and they're getting involved in politics that matter the most to them and to young people in the Middlesbrough area.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Teresa. It was maybe timely. We will try and avoid acronyms because we have the public potentially watching who might not know all of the acronyms that we use, that we get so used to. Thank you for that. Thank you, Laurie. Thanks for your support for the young people concerned. Much appreciated. And so we'll move on now to the apologies for absence, Susie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor McTighe. We also have a few apologies from officers, and I'll just run through those. We have apologies from Rob Brown, Stuart Williams, Beth Bradshaw, Rebecca Scott. Obviously, our Member of Youth Parliament for Middlesbrough and Deputy Member for Youth Parliament for Middlesbrough, Gail Earl, and then unfortunately due to issues within fostering, we've also had a late apology from Paul Rudd, and therefore we've got Jenny in attendance and Rob Hamer as well, Chair. Thank you.
And Rob Hamer gives his apology.
He does, yes. Thanks,
So
Chair.
we've got Jenny. Thank you, Jenny, for replacing those people. Probably at short notice. I know there was a need for you to come as well. Thank you, but it's lovely to meet you and have you here. So the next thing, have we got any declarations of interest, please? I can't see any indications, so we'll take that as a no from everyone. Thank you. The minutes of the last meeting held on the 30th of July. Can we agree they're a true record of that meeting?
Agreed, Chair.
Agree? Anyone else like to agree? Second that, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Agree, Chair.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the section which is actions from the board meeting on the 30th of July. I'm going to hand over to Susie. You're going to feed back on this, aren't you, Susie? Please, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a standard item that comes to every meeting with regards to actions which have taken place and that have been followed forward. So there've been a couple of actions since our last meeting. So just to advise that on the 30th of July, there was supposed to be an update on Future for Families and Fostering, and those are coming to today's meeting. There's also a number of other actions which are in your pack. I don't intend to go through those, but just one item that I wanted to say was in terms of the full member briefing on corporate parenting board that did take place on the 8th of September, and another training session is due to take place with the local government association at a future date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Susie. Another thing maybe to bring to your attention is that we are programming these meetings with about a six-week interval between each one. There's maybe one time where we have a 8-week interval. So that is to show our intent and purpose that we're very dedicated to meeting together and sharing the ideas that we need to be aware of. So that's another point. I think Susie sent the date meetings, didn't you, Susie, to everyone?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. They should all be in your diaries now for the next municipal year.
And the meetings will be on Wednesdays and not Thursdays. Just to indicate that. That's fine. Thank you. Anyone, any questions there or anything? Is that okay? No, fine. Okay, thank you. So the next, I didn't know what I needed to say. Sue Butcher and Rachel Farnham will join us shortly. They're hoping to be in our meeting by about 4:30. They were called away because the Ofsted team leader wanted to speak to them, a phone call, and it could only happen now. So we will have Sue and Rachel hopefully join us shortly. Okay, and so we'll move on to the Youth Member of Parliament for Middlesbrough. So as you said, Laurie, we're not having any feedback today, is that right?
That's correct. Unfortunately, they are both at college or at school, and I've only just taken up post to work with them, so I haven't had a chance to meet them yet.
Okay.
So I send their apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Well, they're very interesting young people whom we have met in previous meetings, and they've given a very good account. Sometimes it might be helpful if they can't make it to send us a written version of events or a little blog or a little video clip or something like that. That would be good that you might discuss with them, please.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Next, we have item 6, the multi-agency looked after partnership, acronym in MALAP, the subgroups. It's a standard item. Now, it says on your agenda that no multi-agency looked after partnership subgroups have met since the last meeting of the board. I'm a bit concerned that maybe we need to reinvigorate the MALAP. I'm a bit concerned that maybe we're not having sufficient feedback from the different subgroups. So what I'm proposing is that we have a relaunch to some extent so that we can get regular feedback and we can be on the ball with this. There was some confusion about membership at one point, but I thought we'd got that ironed out. So I don't know, Susie, if you think it might be useful if you sent round to members a brief description of the different subgroups and confirm that members are happy to participate within the different subgroups, and we'll see if we can get a spread of membership across the groups.
I'm more than happy to do that, Chair, and I'll also speak with Sue and Rachel in terms
Yes.
of what they want to do in terms of the way forward of the Malak subgroups as well.
That's right, yes, I have spoken to it about it with Sue too, and she agrees that we need a bit of a relaunch and we need to get this up and running on our agenda in an efficient way. So is that all right with everyone, that you'll sign up? Sue will send us some documentation round and we'll sign up. Okay, I know we have before, some of us, but we can confirm, and then we'll take it from there, see if we get a good spread of members across the different subgroups. If not, we'll look at it second time and speak to you about that. Okay, that should work, shouldn't it? So sorry about that item. So now we have Kay from the South Tees Youth Offending Service, who is going to provide us with a presentation. We had a fantastic presentation yesterday. Thank you for that, Kay. It was excellent. I think it was very much valued and appreciated by the members who were able to attend that. So we'd be very grateful if you would give us an overview now in your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that feedback. Susie, would it be okay, please, to share your screen?
Yes, absolutely. I'll just get it
Thank
up
you.
for you, Kay, if you just bear with me for one moment.
Thank you. Just while we're waiting, essentially what this presentation is today, I sent a briefing paper that went out with the minutes of the last meeting, and I've incorporated that briefing paper into today's presentation, just so to kind of give you some further information on what our offer is to our looked after children, and also provide some context about how we work with them. So you will see some repeated information from the briefing paper. However, my intention is to kind of give some further detail on that today.
Thank you, Kay. That's excellent.
Can I just say, Chair, it was an excellent meeting yesterday, and we learned a lot. Thank you.
You certainly did. It was very helpful. Thank you, Teresa. That's right.
Thank you. We were delighted to host it and that you were present.
Oh, good.
It's been a much needed boost for the staff. Fabulous.
Oh, well, give them our hearty thanks and congratulations on the work in preparing that briefing. Thank you.
I will do. Thank you.
Chair, with your permission, Chair, I'd like to say, Kay, I sent an email to Sue this morning, and I think it's been shared with everybody. So thanks again.
Yes, it has.
Thanks very much for that. I think we can't give people enough thanks and support for all the excellent work that they're doing. Thank you, Kay, to you and your team.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Yes, Susie, if we could go to slide 2 straight away, that would be great, please.
Could you put it on the full screen, please, Susie, so we can see that? Only ones down the side. That's it. That's the size.
That's great.
Thank
you very much. Okay. So just in terms of providing some context into how we work with our looked after children within our service, it's just to make members aware that there is a national protocol, and it's called the National Protocol on Reducing Unnecessary Criminalisation of Looked After Children and Care Leavers. It was published in 2018. And what that document is, it's a national protocol, and it's there to provide a framework to help local areas reduce the criminalisation of looked after children and care leavers. It was co-developed with a wide range of stakeholders and leaders in statutory and voluntary sectors right across from children's social care, justice, police, health, etc. And the protocol illustrates kind of the importance that we collectively place on helping our vulnerable children and young people achieve their full potential. So the protocol kind of sets out what the overarching key principles are. So I'm just going to kind of read these bullet points. So these are kind of the principles that we work to when we're working with our looked after children. So the first one is we ask ourselves, would this be good enough for my child? So as a corporate parent, and as often we're parents ourselves, we would ask ourselves that question. It should be at the forefront of our mind at all times. The protocol sets out that we avoid the unnecessary criminalisation of children who are looked after and care leavers, including through prevention activity. And I gave a little bit of overview yesterday around it's a new area of our work, prevention. We listen to and learn from our young people, that we understand the impact of trauma and abuse on development, that we offer restorative and diversionary approaches, and that should underpin the response that we make to our young people. Resettlement planning and through care for children in custody, sentenced or remanded, and that needs to start from entering the remand placement or custodial establishment. So I'm just going to add some detail around that. So in terms of feedback from our children and young people, we receive that in a number of ways, but certainly what we do is we receive that at the end of every court order or every out-of-court disposal we have with them. And we do use that to shape our service delivery. Another point to mention is that all of our staff, certainly those who undertake assessments, are all trained or have received some level of training around adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs you may have heard of, and trauma. And in terms of resettlement, I was on a call with the Youth Justice Board only this week, and HMIP, who are our regulating body, were on that call, and they are placing very much an importance around resettlement, and there's potential that is going to find its way into our inspection framework moving forwards from 2021 onwards. Just in terms of this protocol then, what we've done is we have developed what we did after in 2018, was we developed a working with looked after children guide for practitioners in youth and children's social care. And what that document does is it sets out the role and remit of practitioners within each service, so they know what to do and when. And it's very clear in that guidance, and it does reflect this national protocol around if a young person comes into the criminal justice system, who does what and when, and how we should manage that. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Susie. Thank you. So this was in the briefing report circulated, and I kind of think it's important to note really that we were inspected in 2019 and we received an overall rating of good. Our case management practice, however, was noted to be outstanding, with assessment being a particular strength. And what they found was that our case managers, who are the people who do the assessments and work with our young people the most, demonstrated a clear understanding of each child and young person's life and how that affected their current behaviour and risks, and that the young people, supervised young people, rated the service they received highly. So that was some recognition about that we do listen to our young people and that we do shape our service accordingly. HMIP also noted the strong relationships with our partner agencies, in particular Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, Forensic Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services and social care staff. And whilst there wasn't any specific recommendations for us from HMIP in relation to children looked after, we as a service would always strive for excellence for our children, and we continue to offer the enhanced level of service that outlined in that briefing paper that I'm going to come on to in a second. But there is a level of concern from me, and because of that, in terms of increasing numbers that we're seeing now, it is a strategic priority for our service in 2021. We weren't directly involved in the Ofsted inspection that took place in November 19, but there was a recommendation for us around our children who were held in police custody overnight. Since the inspection, there's been, fair to say, a considerable amount of work undertaken in this area of practice. We have revised our PACE protocol, and that's now been signed off by senior leaders. We've established a steering group, and we monitor and scrutinise all of the PACE transfers. We've also, in addition to that, written a practice guidance, again similar to the working with looked after children. We've wrote a separate guidance document for those children who who go through police custody, so that everybody is clear about who does what, and there's very clear flow charts in that document, etc. That's very easy for both sides, for both children's social care and ourselves to understand. I just wondered if I could pause at this point to see if members had any questions in relation to our inspection that they would like to ask before I move on.
Has anyone any questions?
No questions, but just to say it's a good, fantastic report, and obviously you're on the right track. So if there's anything we can do for you, just ask.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Could I just ask to remind us how many adults are in the team, Kay, and how many children are working with you at the moment?
Yeah, we have approximately, in terms of our caseload, Councillor Halloway, is that what you're asking?
Yes,
Okay.
caseload and how many people and how many children, and then the caseload ratio. Yes, please.
Yes, so we have approximately any one time 120 that we work with across the service, which appears quite low, but we have a quicker throughput than a lot of other services. So we sometimes work with our children for 3 months, and then so there's a constant churn of young people coming through. We have approximately 43 members of staff. Not all of those are full-time. And not all of those are case holding staff. Some of them have specialist roles, such as our restorative practitioners or court practitioners, etc. An education specialist who we just employed. So we have around about 8 case managers in each team, but not all of those are full-time. And we have support working staff. We have a team of 9 support workers that work across the service in Middlesbrough and Redcar and Cleveland that support the work of the case managers. So all in all, there's around about 25 of them who are definite frontline eyes and ears of the service, assessors and doers.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I was also going to ask you a question about, could you just say something about resettlement planning? Give us an example of what that could mean.
Yes, of course. So when a young person goes into custody, what resettlement is how are we going to work with them upon their release into custody? Sorry, back into the community. We start that, strangely enough, on the day that they enter custody. So young people go into custody for 2 reasons. Either they would be remanded into custody, which means they are not sentenced, or they would go into custody when they have been sentenced and they are in there for a variety of reasons and a variety of lengths of time. So it's very much on a case-by-case basis. Those children who are remanded into custody are often there for a short period of time, and we would try and offer custody is always a very last resort for our young people anyway. But in terms of our remanded young people, they are often the more difficult to resettle because sometimes they're only in for a very short period of time. They have what are called resettlement practitioners in custody. Our closest establishment is Wetherby, so we have a good relationship with them. And we work very closely with their resettlement practitioners. We have to adhere to our national standards. So we must see our young people within 10 working days of them going into custody if they're sentenced, 5 working days if they are remanded. And then we must see them on a minimum of monthly basis whilst they are sentenced and in custody. So we plan straight away, as soon as they go in, we look at all of their factors, accommodation, education, the health, mental health, drug and alcohol. We do a full holistic assessment of their need, and we look at what is it that this young person is going to need upon their release. And we absolutely look at accommodation, and if that's going to be an issue, we would work very closely with our colleagues in children's social care and make referrals to the appropriate services. So resettlement is purely around resettling a young person who's been in custodial setting back out into the community. And we do that in a number of ways. There's and again, it depends on the length of their sentence. But if they've been in custody for a very long time, sometimes they can come out on what's called a release on temporary licence. And that's where sometimes they come out on day release for either a day or 2. And that's very much supervised by ourselves and the prison service to make sure, our youth custody service, to make sure that that's absolutely risk assessed and there's a purpose for them to be out in the community on that one day. Sometimes it can be for them to attend college interviews or to resettle them into housing provision, etc.
Thank you, Kay. That's very clear now. Thank you, very helpful.
Thank you.
Jeanette, Councillor Walker, you'd like to ask a question?
Yeah, just based on that, you just said to us there, they come out for day release to establish connections with the colleges, etc., etc. Are they accompanied on that? Are they
Yes, they are.
accompanied? Because I'm just wondering about whether they could skip, so to speak, or disappear into the communities again. So everything is done to make sure that doesn't happen, I presume.
Absolutely. It's risk assessed from both sides. It's risk assessed from the prison service, risk assessed from ourselves. And often we will go to the prison, collect them, take them to where they need to be, and then return them to the custodian. Sometimes they're out a day, they're out for a couple of hours while they're being interviewed for a housing provision or for a college provision or a work interview or whatever it is that they need to come out for. So yes, they are accompanied.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Higgins?
Yes, just to clarify, please, Kay, the children that you deal with, is it right that they're aged between 10 and 18?
Yes.
Because when you were talking about, prison and the length of time, if people are listening and thinking, oh my goodness, how old are these youngsters? So it's yes.
Yes, they are. However, in terms of custodial sentences, there is a difference between if they're under 15 and over 15. So if they're over 15, they go into what's called a Young Offender Institute. If they're under 15, they'd go into a secure children's home or a secure training centre. So there's a definite difference when they turn 15 and going into custody.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
more questions so far? No. Thank you, Kay. We'd be happy for you to move on now. Thank you.
Thank you. Susie, could I have the next slide up, please? Thank you. So in terms of our offer to young people, we work with, so there's a number of things that we do that's kind of over and above, if you like, with our looked after children and the offer that we have to services working with those children. And this was in the briefing report, so I'm just going to quickly go through this. So we work with care home staff and the police to identify appropriate responses to young people who offend in residential settings, including the use of restorative intervention as a solution. So we provide training to staff who work in those homes. We also have a joint decision-making panel that we have with our police colleagues. So for every young person that comes through on an out-of-court disposal, we jointly decide how we're going to proceed with those young people. For children who are looked after and who offend in a children's home, we have a process whereby the Crown Prosecution Service, it's called a 10-point check. So I'll give you a quick example. So if a young person causes a criminal damage offence in a children's home, we would be just making sure that that young person wouldn't unnecessarily be criminalised because it happened in a children's home rather than in a family home. So we would ask, it's going back to that question, would we be making this decision if it was a child in our own home, if they'd caused criminal damage? Would we be ringing the police? So we go back to the Crown Prosecution Service and we do this 10-point check with them to make sure that that's happening, and that sometimes goes to court and it's adjourned off for us to make those checks. We build on our current arrangements with Children's Home to offer that support and advice to care staff. So that's about the training that we do. And that's not necessarily just with our in-house provision. We would offer that to private children's homes where sometimes our looked after children are placed as well. We promote good practice with our staff and partners working with looked after children. So we try and keep our staff up to date with all looked after legislation and any training that children's services are offering. We ensure our attendance at all planning meetings for young people. So any strategy meetings, any joint planning meetings, any looked after children, core group, care group, any meeting like that, we would expect and invite and be on board with those and assisting in the planning of those. We have specialist safeguarding case managers in both of our teams. So we have 2 operational teams, one in Middlesbrough, one in Redcar, and we have 1 case manager in each of those teams that provide an essential link to children's services in both local authorities and provide advice and guidance to our own internal staff around safeguarding issues and processes. We've recently done some training, just to mention, the Futures for Families team, and we also train our foster carers and, as I've said, staff in care homes. I could have the next slide, please, Susie. Thank you. So our offer continued. So we ensure that all of our plans for our children looked after are shared with the young people themselves. We go through it with them. We ensure that it's shared with their carers and with colleagues from Children's Services. We've developed a joint supervision arrangement between ourselves and Middlesbrough Children's Services, which offers the opportunity to have joint decision making and that our strategies are closely aligned so that we know that the needs of our young people are being met by both services. And that we're not going off on a tangent with one thing and Children's Services are doing another, that we have a joined up approach for that. We've recently developed a working agreement between ourselves and Early Help with exactly the same arrangements that we didn't have in place before. And the purpose of that is to kind of try and reduce the escalation in the criminal justice system for those who are looked after by working collaboratively. And we work with Cleveland Police and Children's Home staff to ensure those young people who are in children's homes are not prosecuted unnecessarily, which is the work I was describing earlier in terms of the 10-point plan. I was jumping the gun. I've gone too far there. So I can have the next slide, please, Susie, because I guess through all of that, it's so what? So our offer, in terms of everything I've just read through there, I think that kind of shows that we do recognise that the needs of our looked after children do warrant an over and above service, and we endeavour to provide that to our looked after children. Our caseloads are monitored to ensure that we don't have a representation in the criminal justice system. I'm going to come back to that point in a moment. We have systems and processes in place to robustly manage our young people, that we have a collaborative and joined up approach to work with our partners, and that there isn't a duplication in planning, and that our young people are offered a good service that's appropriate to the need by our trained and skilled professionals. In terms of the caseloads being monitored, we have a new chair of the Youth Justice Board, Keith Fraser, and Keith is launching some work that I haven't seen yet around overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. Now that is in relation to Black and minority ethnic children, but he also makes reference in his papers to Gypsy Roma traveller children and children looked after. So I will have a keen eye on whether we're going to get some tools to assist us with monitoring our caseloads and whether we'll get something to help us look at kind of trends, etc. So if I could have the next slide, please, Susie. Thank you. Yeah, I just thought it would be useful to kind of show you a breakdown of our caseload, of how it looked in May, which is kind of, at the time I wrote this presentation, kind of the most up-to-date data that I had. So what you'll be able to see from this is that generally, and this it's a good representation of kind of how we are generally, that the majority of young people that come into our service are white British males around the age of 17. And then we break this down in a number of ways that it gets reported into our YOS management board. But for the purposes of today, I have brought up kind of what our looked after children numbers look like on our caseload. And back in May, they were looking at around about 19-20%, which seemed quite high to me, hence this becoming a strategic priority for me in terms of moving forwards. So the split is we've split it between Middlesbrough and Redcar looked after, and you can see there's around about 10% of our caseload in each area there. So it's pretty much the same in Redcar and Cleveland as well. Could I have the next slide, please, Susie? In terms of next steps. Thank you. So this year, we are usually asked to excuse me, produce a youth justice plan annually, but this year we weren't asked to do that by the Youth Justice Board. We were asked to come up with a COVID recovery plan. So we've done that, and that had to be submitted to the Youth Justice Board by the 1st of September. And then underneath that we have, and one of my strategic priorities, we've got 7 next year, but one of them is highlighted there, which is responding to looked after children to ensure that they have positive outcomes for those who enter the youth justice system, and it is a strategic priority. So following the approval that that we're waiting for from the Youth Justice Board, we will develop an action plan of how we are going to achieve that plan. So we've got some ideas in draft already, but we'll firm them up if and when, if around the time that we get that feedback from the Youth Justice Board. And then we will monitor the progress of that plan through our YOS Management Board and also through scrutiny through the Youth Justice Board. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Susie, I think that may be my last slide. Yes, it is. So I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Kay. Has anyone a question for Kay? No? Kay, I have a question myself. It was
Sure.
about Keith Fraser's research papers, you said. That
Yes.
he was working on BME and other minority groups within the system.
Yeah.
It would be useful, I think, if we might have some sight of that information to be aware of the situation as it develops and as he finds through his research. Might it be possible to share some of that information and that research with us, please?
Yes, of course. I'm only aware of it through our Youth Justice Bulletin at the moment.
Okay.
I don't think he's set out how he intends to do that yet, but certainly as I receive papers, I will more than happily share them with yourself and disseminate through this group.
Yeah, thank you. And any other research that comes to mind or that you find out about, or any progress and development, it would be good if we could be kept regularly updated, please, and we'd appreciate that.
Yes, of course, no problem. I was going to ask, Chair, if you would like a copy of the National Protocol
yes.
document. I could circulate that with the minutes for today. It's quite a lengthy one, but I think it's worth a read in terms of how we should be working together.
You mentioned, and I think you said PACE protocol.
Yes.
Is that an acronym, PACE, or is that a speedy protocol?
Sorry, no, it is an acronym. We're full of them in the Youth Justice Service. It's it's the Police and Criminal Evidence, and I'm sure Detective Chief Inspector Finney will be more than familiar with PACE. It's an acronym for that. Yeah.
Oh right, Police
Under
and
Criminal Evidence Act, yes, and it's just children that get arrested and detained under that legislation.
Right, nothing to do with it being fast then, no?
No, sadly not.
No, sadly not, no. Deb, would you like to say anything, Deb, in this instance? Deb Finney? Would you like to add anything? I can't hear if that's the case or not, or whether you've got your mic on mute. Can you hear me, Deb?
Hear me?
Yes, Deb Finney, yes. I just wondered if you wanted to say anything to contribute to this evidence and information that we've received from Kay.
No, it's obviously Kay's alluded to in there, it is national and police are supporting it. And there is a lot of work ongoing from like the National Child Protection Inspection as well in relation to children being brought into custody, which is supportive of Kay's presentation there.
That's really good. Thank you for that. I just feel that, having listened to you, Kay, and listened to yesterday, I feel that our children are really being cared for in your service, and we couldn't ask for any more protection and care and input and, the restorative justice system that comes into it. And it's about reforming behaviours, isn't it? And changing ways of thinking. And I really admire the work you're doing. And I think I feel very satisfied that our children are getting a very good deal here.
Thank you.
And Teresa, Councillor Higgins?
Yes, can I just say it is important to keep young children out of the justice system, to see, when they're younger, they don't know, they're getting with their mates. And I think it is important not to have them have a criminal record for the rest of their life. And if your service seems to be doing everything right for them, and I'm sure it's helped a lot. There was a young man yesterday in the presentation, and Josh, did they call him Josh?
It was Zach.
Zach, I knew it was, yeah. He was absolutely fantastic. Because of your service, he's turned his life round, and now he is mentoring other youngsters. So yeah, great. I'm really pleased, and like Councillor Halawi, yes, your service area is doing marvellous for the children of Middlesbrough, and I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Kay. Has anyone got a question? No, I haven't thought of any questions. It was a very thorough presentation. Is Craig, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, thank you. Just to go back to the ever-present Ofsted report, one of the other areas for improvement was to the response to children with specific vulnerabilities, including children held overnight in police custody. Could you just tell us, so I didn't attend yesterday, and I am really sorry, I think you might have covered that there, but could you just tell us about the improvements that you've undertaken in that particular area?
Yeah, so I alluded to it in my presentation, Councillor Wright, in terms of the development of the PACE protocol, and we developed a steering group to scrutinise all of the decisions that are made around children who are held in custody and those who are requested for a secure PACE bed. So we have those processes in place. We receive regular information now from the police that we weren't receiving before, and we monitor that on a monthly basis at the moment. We will move to quarterly when we're more established, but I think we are still finding our feet with that group a little bit. We are looking to develop an in-house PACE provision so that we have emergency accommodation for our young people who may be held in police custody because there is no place for them to go. So we are looking at developing that piece of work. And I think what we've done, certainly through the PACE steering group, is we've sought assurance from police colleagues. I've worked very closely with the Chief Inspector in custody throughout this, colleagues in the emergency duty team and colleagues in the youth offending service across the T's, to assure ourselves that those young people who are taken into custody, whether it's day or night, it makes no difference, but there's clearly vulnerability issues through the night, that those young people are safeguarded appropriately, and it's been kind of clearly articulated to us the process that happens when they do go into custody, and all of the checks and balances that police make when they go into custody. And we've kind of tightened up our appropriate adult services, access to systems so that the emergency duty team have access to youth offending systems through the night so they can see whether we're working with them or we're not, because they already have access to children's services systems, so they would know a history. But we've given them access to our systems as well, so that they would have, so they would know if we're working with them or we're not, and what their plan is for that child. So there's been some significant strides. I would like to say they are significant strides, but we're not 100% there yet. We're on an improvement journey with it. I'd like to see that PACE bed provision being signed off. We are kind of down the road with that and working very closely with Paul Rudd, who's the head of service for Futures for Families, on that. So yeah, we're developing a provision and we've sought assurance, and we feel more satisfied that our children are safeguarded when they are taken into custody and they're not held inappropriately overnight.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Wright?
Thank you for that. Obviously, in the Ofsted report, it did say that the local authority were not aware of how many children were kept overnight in custody. Could you tell us, and it's not appropriate for this forum, that's okay, but could you tell us in August how many children were kept overnight in police custody?
I haven't got that figure to hand, Councillor Wright, but they're usually very few and far between. I have had the list for August for Middlesbrough. I think I'll say approximately 11 or 12. There wasn't very many. I get a spreadsheet with the whole T's, so I'd have to whittle it into Middlesbrough, but yeah.
Yes, Councillor Wright?
Sorry, that seems quite high to me. For few and far between, 12 children in custody in August seems quite high. If we are seeking to not criminalise children in care, why do we have 12 children kept in custody overnight?
There may be any child who's arrested, not specifically looked after children. They are children that the police have arrested or taken into their into the custody suite for whatever reason that they've been arrested, not necessarily looked after children.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for the clarification. Yes, that's true. That seemed a significant number if it was all looked after children. Okay, we're relieved about that. So is that all from questions for Kay? Well, I would like to thank you once again, Kay. Thank you and your team very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, no, we'd like to hear from you regularly and give us any updates as you see appropriate. Thanks.
Okay, will do.
The next item on the agenda is Future for Families, but I don't think that Sue has arrived yet. So if with your good grace, I'd like to move on to the fostering service report, which is item 9, and put it in the place of item 8 and come back to item 8 if everybody's agreeable with that, please. Is that okay? So if we go to the fostering services report that was going to be Paul Rudd, but he's been otherwise engaged elsewhere, we have Jenny, don't we? Jennifer Rowan, who's going to present that report to us.
Hello. Can I just warn everyone? Hi, everyone. I just need to warn you all. I'm having some IT issues and I keep cutting out. So if that's the case, give me apologies in advance.
Thank you for letting us know. We'll be patient and hopefully hear all that you've got to say. Thank you.
Okay, so the presentation prepared is on the basis of the information that was collected at the last financial year, and that's the data set. Each year Ofsted asks the local authority, fostering service and independent fostering agencies for data about their fostering service, and it's a national data collection, and we're asked to provide data on the characteristics of foster carers, terms of approval of fostering households, capacity and the use of fostering placements, recruitment and retention of fostering households, and then data on complaints, allegations, and number of brother and sister placements, so essentially sibling placements. So if we could just go, thank you. So as you can see from the information provided there on year, well, from 2018, the number of fostering households that Middlesbrough had was 137, and that equated to placement provision for 251 children. You can see that there was a decrease in 2019, but from 2018 through to 2020, there has been a net increase from 137 in 2018 to 141 fostering households, which is equated to potential care arrangements for 267 children that have required care outside of their immediate birth family. Those figures are broken down in terms of connected carers, which are family relatives or someone who is connected to a child through friendship. It could be an example, could be a child's friend's parent has put themselves forward to care for a little one. So in terms of that breakdown, this slide shows us that. So in 2018, there were 37 fostering households approved as long-term foster carers for children. There were 81 fostering households approved to care for children on a short-term basis, 16 households as connected persons, and there were 3 fostering to adopt. In 2019, there were 31 households approved for long-term, 76 for short-term foster care provision, and 17 in connected persons. In 2020, you can see that there were 21 households approved, foster care households approved for long term, 74 for short term, 27 for connected persons, 1 for foster to adopt, and 18 households that were approved as foster carers for respite. That number in terms of respite is quite high, and the reason for that is to support placement stability for children. What we do try to achieve is that where respite is required for a child, that respite is undertaken with carers that are known to them, because what we need is children to have no further changes and having to meet new people unnecessarily, and we want to keep that support network as small as possible in terms of unfamiliar adults that they're subsequently introduced to. The number of fully approved connected carers continues to increase year on year, and at the time of writing the report, 52% of all carers provide short-term placements for children. Overall, from 2018 to 2020, one of the real successes of the fostering service and pays testament to the hard work and tenacity of the social workers, but also the foster carers who are actively involved in supporting the recruitment and retention of new foster carers to Middlesbrough. The number of foster carers throughout has increased. In 2018, there was 4 carers approved. The primary offer type was long term, 10 short term, 16 connected, and 1 foster to adopt. In 2019, there was a carer approved for long term, well, a fostering household. There was 5 households approved for short term and 5 for connected persons. In 2020, I don't know if that screen's gone blank for everybody. So are people able to see that? Or is that just mine?
No, I think it's gone blank.
Okay. Would you like me to?
Sorry, Chair, the numbers are in the pack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just having a few issues with my my system. If you just bear with me, I'll try and get it back up and running for you.
Rowan, Jenny, you could tell us what 21. You're up to the 20.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So in 2020, there was 1 fostering household approved long term, 17 short term, 19 connected persons, 2 foster to adopt, and 2 respite. 2020 resulted in our best ever recruitment year, with 41 newly approved carers, and this is broken down into 22 mainstream foster caring households and 19 connected persons, and that's a significant improvement when in 2018 it was 6 mainstream and 6 connected persons carers. As part of that, the recruitment team do work exceptionally hard, and in contrast to other local authorities and inclusive of independent fostering agencies as well, the conversion rate from initial inquiries of potential applicants through to fully approved foster carer households is approximately 20% at the current time. In many other authorities, it's less than 10%.
Oh, that's good to know. Are there any other conclusions that you can draw from that, Jenny, that would be relevant to the progression that we see?
One of the key areas of development, which will be later on, but is there are shortages in terms of provision of carers as long-term foster placements for children. That has happened, well, and for short term as well. That's happened as a result. It's a positive reason that's happened, because we've had a number of children placed with carers that were approved on a short term basis. However, the children have claimed those carers and the carers have claimed those children, and then that's become their long term foster placement. So permanence is being achieved really successfully, and again that's through the hard work and commitment of the foster carers and the multi-agency team around the children. It's really imperative that wherever possible we reduce changes for children. We don't want them being ideally in more than 1 foster placement. We're not always successful in achieving that, but where we can achieve that, we really need to work hard to achieve permanence in that matter.
Absolutely, thank you.
So if we go to the next slide.
Chair, can I ask a question there, please?
Absolutely.
Sorry, thank you, Jennifer. Councillor Jeanette Walker here. I'm just wondering, with the recruitment drive, I would imagine it takes place every year. Are we doing something differently then as to what we used to do? Is that what's happening? There used to be posters all over town in different areas, even car parks, etc. So I know you've only been here a short time. However, you will obviously know what programs we have for recruiting foster carers. And I'm just wondering, have we done something different to improve those rates? Plus the fact converting those inquiries into foster carers.
Yeah, so in answer to the first part of the question in regard to are we trying something different, absolutely. We need to be competitive with other local authorities, but independent fostering agencies as well. As part of that, we've got a number of new staff within our service that have experience in other local authorities and in independent fostering agencies. So we've got an absolute expert skills mix in terms of supervising social workers and managers within our service, whereby they're established with Middlesbrough, but also from other areas as well. So we've combined that. As a result of that, what we're targeting quite heavily is the use of social media and the internet, so Google Ads. That is what a lot of independent fostering agencies are doing. We're also in the process currently of updating the fostering for Middlesbrough website, and we're also developing with a view of implementing quite shortly the foster carer portal. That will be for approved foster carers, but what we know is word of mouth is a real key thing as well. So we do have a number of foster carers that have come to us from independent fostering agencies at the advice of current Middlesbrough carers, but also as a result of their experience of Middlesbrough, both children's social work and from word of mouth from about other people in the fostering service. So I think that really gives a sense of that there are some really good practices going on in Middlesbrough for someone to come from an independent fostering agency through to Middlesbrough Council. There's a real commitment for foster carers to be within the local authority from where the children originate from. And we do have quite a good conversion rate of people transferring from independent fostering agencies through to us. It's much higher that way than it is from foster carers moving from Middlesbrough going to independent fostering agencies.
Right. Chair, can I just say that I appreciate that we've always been pretty good on that. People come to us rather than go away from us. So that's a good thing. And I'm glad to see those conversion rates are improving and everything's improving the way it is. And thank you very much for the information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think one of the factors, is it not true to say, Jenny, that keeps the foster carers together is the foster carer support team. And I think that's a very important feature for the foster carers to be able to rely on each other for ideas, advice, meetings, whatever. Would you like to talk a little bit about that to us, please?
Yeah, so at the current time, I know that there is the Middlesbrough Foster Carer Association, and they do some fantastic work. They are Middlesbrough Foster Carers, however, they have formed their own association to provide peer support to each other. We are trying to build on that further, whereby the development and implementation of the foster carer portal, because not all of our foster carers are part of the Foster Carer Association. So really trying to reach out and engage all of our foster carers through the use of the portal, which will be used as a forum, as a learning exchange, as a resources hub, and good practice as well, but also that peer support. The peer support is something that is fantastic within this local authority. From the point of a foster carer coming to be approved, they are identified and matched with someone who is already an experienced foster carer, because I think it's really important that unless you've walked in the shoes of a foster carer, we can never fully appreciate the role that they do, and it's absolutely invaluable whilst extremely challenging as well. So that buddy system that we do have, it's serving really effective to support newly approved foster carers.
Paul Snowball, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'd like please, yeah. Carl Snowball, one of walking shoes of a foster carer. And I know the figures that we've been presented with today in these drafts or information takes us up to, I believe, the 31st of March 2020. So it's year ending March 2020.
Yeah.
But clearly, there's in this world is about a week into the first lockdown, if we're going to have any more. So I know lockdown has brought pressure on everybody, not least foster carers and look after children in foster households. And ear to the ground, if you like, with the Fostering Association and social networks, I sense, even going through the figures that you've gone through there, that there's almost a bit of a disquiet and disharmony in the fostering household, shall we say, that, and it might be around COVID, it might be around pressures of COVID, it might be around other things, but as I hear things around, I think I'm going to call it a day. I know of people that are saying they're calling it a day for all sorts of reasons, and I just wonder whether you have flavour of, I know these numbers are looking good for 2020 March ending, but if we were to look at March ending 2021, are we going to see a steep drop because of people leaving the service for whatever reason, COVID related or otherwise?
Just to come in there very quickly, sorry, it's Sue Butcher. I've finished talking to Ofsted. I've met with some foster carers recently, Chris, so that's been really helpful. Met with some representatives from the Fostering Association and a couple of other people. And yeah, there certainly are some COVID-related issues in there in terms of contact, some of the very difficult practices that we've had to have. So just to, it's a slight aside, I know, but just to assure you that as DCS, I am doing quite a bit of liaising with foster carers at the moment.
Thank you, Sue. What's your question, Paul?
Well, it doesn't surprise with a number, but I say, listening to social network, I know, or I get the feeling that there's some quite experienced, experienced foster carers that, as I say, for whatever reasons, for whatever personal reasons, or are candidate or moving or being poached perhaps to other fostering agencies. I just wonder whether there was a feel of, if we were to look at these numbers in a year's time, could there well be, a significant drop?
Certainly from my conversations with supervising social workers, and I'm not going to go into specific circumstances, obviously, but the general sense from the direct supervisions with individuals on a one-to-one basis is absolutely, it's been challenging over COVID. However, the vast majority of carers that have been spoken to on a one-to-one through their foster carer supervisions aren't saying that they have any intention of leaving the authority. In the foster carer consultations that we've been having over the last month, there has been small, low attendance. However, for those that have attended, to quote one person verbatim from yesterday, they said that they were 100% happier having had that consultation and were really committed to remain within Middlesbrough because they were really quite excited about some of the things that we were proposing in the opportunities for development and being an active part of that development within the service. We will be doing monthly consultations with carers and really actively encouraging that engagement because we all have the shared vision of children, the best outcomes for children, whatever that looks like, and we can only achieve that as a collaborative effort. And so that ongoing conversation needs to continue, and absolutely appreciate it's formative stages in some respects. However, whilst I appreciate what some of the things that you may be referring to, I think we need to be mindful that that doesn't necessarily reflect the entire foster carer community within Middlesbrough Council.
Thank you, Jenny. So what we'll do then on this point is maybe just have updates in the next few meetings about the trends of the way things are moving. That will be helpful. I think we can just all see what's happening. Would that be okay, please, to provide that update?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay.
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes, please, Janet. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Can I just ask you, do kinship carers get the same treatment as outside carers, particularly around payments?
Yes. So any carer, any connected carer that is approved under Reg 24 or approved through Family Placement Panel, they are in receipt of the same age-related allowance as a mainstream foster care. It's imperative that we treat our connected carers and mainstream carers. There's no differentiation between they're offered the same training opportunities, development opportunities, but also the same level of supervision and support in addition to the finances as well.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, that answers your question?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I think the thing is it's the expectation that kinship carers or associated carers go through the same training and process and assessments as any other foster carers. And if that's the case, and that's fine, then they're given the same remuneration. That's the case, isn't it, Jenny?
Yeah, for anyone who is an approved, whether it be temporarily or fully approved connected carer, they are paid the same age-related allowance as mainstream approved carer.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Thanks, Councillor Thompson, for the question. Are there any more questions for Jenny or indeed for Sue now that we've got Sue. Welcome, Sue. Thank you for coming to the meeting now after your phone call. Hope
Yes,
you,
sorry,
hope you
Chair.
have time to get your breath back.
Can I just clarify something?
Yes,
Chair?
of course, Councillor Higgins.
Yes. These kinship carers that we've just been talking about, that Councillor Thompson, I understand that they've got to be approved, and some of the people who call themselves kinship carers, which they are, don't want to have social services or whatever involved. So they want to do what they want to do. So they can't be approved. Is that right? Am I explaining myself right, or have I just dropped myself in it?
No, I think so what I'm hearing is that we have connected carers who just want, so let's give the example of grandparents that have their grandchildren placed with them and they don't want to be a foster carer, they just want to be grandparents and care for their grandchildren. That's what I'm sort of hearing, but
yes,
surmising. Am I on the right page?
Yes,
No?
yes.
Okay.
And sorry, and those people, rightly or wrongly, I think rightly, but they think they should get some monetary help because, you know, they've had phone calls from the hospital to pick babies up, and, you know, the sons or the daughters' children who they can't look after, and they've taken them home and then, you know, looked after them, but they haven't been handed over. Do you know what I mean?
So do you mean whether they've been, so have they been assessed as foster carers or not?
No.
Right, okay.
The
So
grandparents.
Right, okay. So do you mean if they have a legal order and the children are secured in their care?
Yes.
So for special guardians and child arrangements order, or formerly known as residence orders?
Yes.
Okay. It's not within my gift to be able to comment on that at the current time because I wouldn't be able to give an informed answer.
That's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to clarify something, that's all. But thank you anyway. Thank you for your answers that you could give. Sorry.
Thank you.
Chair, can I make a small comment, please?
Yes, please, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind people that the scrutiny panel that I was chair of at one point, we actually did an investigation into kinship and connected persons. That subject was brought to us, and we did do a very thorough investigation into it. And the recommendations and the information is still contained within that report. And it's open to anybody can actually look at it and access it and see it. There is obviously differing payments, etc., and rules, etc. I think it's a very complicated piece of reporting and very complicated. And I don't honestly think that you can say it in one meeting like today, but it is there for people to refer to, and councillors can access that at any time, and it is in the files. Thank you.
Okay. Do you wish me to continue? Or is there any more questions before?
Are there any more questions for Jenny? But I think you're right, Councillor Walker, that report is really informative. I was involved in the research with you and the team. So if anyone would like a copy of that research and to have it handy, that report, you could request it hopefully from Susie or look into the council files. But don't hesitate to look at that if you think you have more questions on the situation of kinship care and associated carers. Thank you. Connected carers is the technical term, isn't it? Thank you. So, any more questions? I'm just looking for any hands and I can't see any. Okay. So, now then, we will go back to our swapped around agenda items and come to item 8, which is actually now item 9. Yes? Is it? Oh,
Jenny's finished the report.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand. Sorry, Paul.
There's another couple of slides if you'd like me to go through them.
Oh, are there? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I thought we closed them there already.
Sorry.
I beg your pardon, Jenny. Don't let me put you off the slide.
It's absolutely fine. I didn't want to interject.
Oh, yes, no, absolutely. No, sorry.
No, absolutely fine. So in terms of placement use of as of the 31st of March 2020, we had 163 children placed in-house within within Middlesbrough foster carers. There were 15 places that appeared to be that were vacant, and 54 potential placements for children that were not available. And the number of placement used for short break care was 35. So in terms of breaking that not available resource down, there were 11 households. Sorry, my dogs are probably going to bark in a second. There were 11 households whereby carers were taking a break or pending resignation. There were 20 households whereby the needs of children currently in placement. So what we mean by that is we're really careful in terms of where we already have looked after children or the birth children of foster carers. We feel it's really important to appropriately match our looked after children with the foster carer household, whereby we ensure the best fit as we possibly can. We don't want to be setting children up for placement instability, nor do we want to be setting foster carers up for challenges above their and beyond their skills remit or their ability to manage at that point. There were 6 households that weren't available, as they were only available if it was a sibling group placed, and 3 households that were used by children and young people staying put after turning 18. Again, that's a success story in terms of whilst it reduces availability, it's around these children and young people progressing into adulthood and being claimed by the fostering families, but also the children and young people claiming them. And so they're experiencing things like many of our children would, whereby they reach 18 and they're able to remain in that household through to a point whereby they're able to achieve independence and move to their own accommodation. So that equates to a total of 54, which is 38 households. So in terms of next steps and predictions for the financial year ahead, at the time of writing, there were 11 Form F assessments underway with panel dates of July the 2nd or July. There was 2 foster carers going to panel then, 2 in August and 1 in September and 2 in October. I can 2 in November and 1 in December. I can confirm up until the July, August and September have been adhered to, and we've had those 5 new fostering households approved. 11 new fostering households with 12 new short-term and long-term placements and 3 respite placements. We had Regulation 24 assessments of 10 carers, of which 17 children were placed or due to be placed. The next step from approval from Regulation 24 assessment is that we do undertake Form C assessments, which is the fuller assessment to look at whether someone should be approved as a full foster carer, a permanent foster carer for children. So there were 66 carers, which equated to 89 children placed. Our vision is that as we progress in terms of our development journey, is that our numbers of children placed with fully approved connected carers will reduce, because we want to secure children in their forever homes without the intrusiveness of children's services involvement if it's not required, and so securing them through in permanency through the granting of legal orders. There are planned Form C assessments, of which were 14 carers, and that equated to 22 children being placed. We are targeting recruitment. We know nationally that the demographic for children requiring looked after, that become looked after, has changed from your typical 0 to 5. That number has reduced, and it's very much children aged 11 years and over. So we're targeting our recruitment with a focus on children that are 11 to 16 years, our emergency placements, so that we can be reassured that no child is waiting to know where they're going. For sibling groups, that we can increase internally the number of children from sibling groups that can be placed together, because at the time of an emergency and crisis, each other is their safety net, and also mother and child placements. So as we've touched on just before, our recruitment campaign is to include a brand identity for fostering for Middlesbrough, which will be incorporated within the wider Middlesbrough Children Matter family brand. A brochure and supporting inserts with case studies of local children and foster carers. There's some active work that has been undertaken and is continuing to progress to update the case studies in respect to children's lived experience and that of foster carers as well. As I've touched on before, a bespoke website which incorporates videos and an online quiz that will assist in terms of those initial inquiries and that conversion rate, so we can respond to inquiries in a really timely manner, because as we know, it's getting there really quickly to speak to people. That really makes you stand out as a service. And a suite of case studies and accompanying films, and then a collection of poster and flyer designs as well. So that's it in terms of the presentation. If anyone does have any further questions.
Yes, Councillor Walker.
I didn't know whether you could see me or not, so thank you, Chair. Yeah, just regarding the recruitment, one of the things that I'd like to see, would you be consulting with some of the children who are already in care to ask what their ideas are that could be put out regarding recruitment? Will the voice of the child being included into all this?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Our children are our experts in their experience, and they need to be fully involved in everything that we do, because ultimately, as I said before, we need to do with people, and actually this is about our children. They need to be actively involved in that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Thanks, Jenny. Any more questions? I'm really glad I saw those other slides, Jenny, when I thought it was ended already. Beg your pardon once again. That was a really interesting presentation, and we'll be glad to have updates in future meetings. It's really interesting to see the work and the way it progresses and the developments. It's such an important feature of our society, isn't it, to recruit excellent foster families for children who need to be placed in their care. So thank you for that, and thank you to your team too for all the work that they're doing. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, and I'll share that with them. Thank you.
Chair, I've been raising my hand, for a while.
Oh, Zafar, I can't see you. Did you have a question, Zafar? I can't see your hand. No, I can't see your picture at all, actually. Don't know if anyone can.
Right, I thought I haven't seen. Just a simple question for Jenny, if it's okay. What I wanted to ask here, on this one, you mentioned on the last slide that the temporary approval for 66, is it the prediction or is it you got currently?
That's what we had at the time of the writing of this, well, at the time of the data set being provided. Obviously, it's not a static figure, it can change day by day. So that was at the time of writing. At the moment, we remain around 70. Between 60 to 80 is probably the most, the biggest flux really between with temporary approved carers.
Right. So how does this temporary approval work?
Pardon?
How does it work, the temporary approval?
All right, okay.
Do any of them come, the permanent approved, or they just leave after a certain time?
So so what happens is we do a regulation 24 assessment. The period by which we have to complete that assessment without the amended COVID legislation is 16 weeks. If for any reason we have a maximum of 24 weeks, but in order to do so, we need to request prior to 16 weeks an extension for that 8 weeks. During that period, it's imperative that we take the assessment, the connected carers to panel to seek approval. I did the best case scenario that we can absolutely achieve where appropriate is that during that 24 weeks permanence is achieved for children outside of them becoming looked after, outside of them remaining looked after. So if their permanence plan is that they are unable to remain return to parental care, that they can remain with these connected carers if that's assessed as the best plan for them, and through the permanence being achieved through something such as a child arrangement order or a special guardianship order, notwithstanding that there will be some situations where for specific reasons to that child or that fostering family that they need to remain looked after. And so every assessment we do is very unique and focused specifically on the needs of that child or children and that connected carer household.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Ethel. Thank you, Councillor Udin.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask a question. I've written it down. It was about, is there much point in, or do we compare our statistics with other local authorities that are comparable to us, or is there not much point in doing that? And then related to that, I thought, do we have a sharing of good practice with other areas so that we can look at how we can find other ways of working effectively?
Yeah, so there is a South Tees forum with Hartlepool, Darlington, Stockton, Redcar, and so there is regular meetings with our counterparts so we can share good practice, and the need for that was heightened even further during COVID. So there has been multiple conversations and communications in respect to that. In addition to that, there's a North East forum that I've been invited to. I have to say it's the first one that I've been to, so I can't really comment on the well, I can comment on the purpose of it as I anticipate. However, what that then translates to, I'm not too sure at the moment, so I won't be able to give an informed position in respect to that. I'm really keen, as part of our fostering service, we can't work in silo, and our immediate wish is to work alongside other teams within our local authority as a real strong collaborative multi-agency team which is inclusive of foster carers to have the best outcomes for children. Once we've got those solid foundations, it's about branching out further. One of the things that we're looking at particularly for our connected carers, and will be on the portal, is looking at third sector organisations such as Grandparents Plus and other support for them, because often an anxiety can be in terms of securing permanence for children in connected care arrangements is that when the local authority withdraws their involvement, that there's an anxiety that people are just left to it themselves, and actually people need that peer support from, again, they're the experts in their experience, and so utilising other services and trying to bring those in with people's consent and where appropriate to do so at the earliest opportunity. So we are doing that as well.
Thank you. That's very good to know. That's useful to know that close collaboration and sharing of good practice. Thank you. Are there any more questions from anyone? No? Well, then I will say thank you once again, Jenny, for another interesting and really excellent presentation. And so, dare I say once again, we'll move now to the Future for Families, item 8 on the agenda, which has become item 9, because Sue, you're going to talk to us about this item, aren't you?
Chair, I do believe we might have lost Sue, so if you just bear
We
with
can
us.
see her, but
Oh,
she's
can
not.
you?
That's
Here.
it.
Oh, you're there. Sorry, Sue.
I am here.
There we are. She's there.
You can
Lovely.
see
Thank
when
you.
she's
Sorry,
got the
Sue.
mic off.
You don't lose me easily, Susie, I'm afraid. You
Oh,
might
we're
wish
going
to.
No, not at all, Sue. We want you here forever. So I do apologise. I just couldn't see you on my screen, so sorry about that.
Okay. Are you going to share? Is anyone going to share the presentation?
Yes, I'll share the presentation
Thank you.
for you. If you just bear with me, I shall pop it on the screen for you.
As Councillor Halawi said, you may have been expecting Rob Hamer. He's dealing with a really tricky piece of work involving a real youngster. It's going to be excellent, but I felt that he needed to be away doing that. So you have to put up with me this afternoon. So I'll endeavour to do my best.
Thank you, Sue. We don't ever put up with you. We're always really grateful that you
Well,
can
I hope so.
I
hope so. Right, okay, so I'm really excited actually to be presenting this presentation on Future Families. It's an update, but it's an extraordinary scheme, an extraordinary initiative, and I know that it's going to have really positive outcomes for Middlesbrough's children. So, first slide. So this is really the Future for Families hub model. I think that some of you will have seen this before, but it's a really interesting model. And you can see down the left-hand side, we've got provocations. So it's prompts, really. It's sort of like prodding you in the ribs. As a parent, would I be happy enough with this for my child? And I know that I've heard counsellors around the room particularly say that. where do we see this child? Where do we see this young person in 6 months' time, 1 year's time, 2 years' time? What would we say this to this child? Are we managing the risk for the child? Or actually, are we managing the risk for us? Who is really at the centre of our thinking? So that's sort of like, as I say, prods in the, prods in the ribs. Are we really doing this for the child? Would we say what we're saying? Would we say it to the child? And then down the right-hand side, you can see some non-negotiables. I think there always has to be in local authorities things that are absolutely rock bottom basics that there is, no negotiation about. We have a whole family approach, for example. We work with partners. We sometimes have to have really difficult conversations. I'm sure Jenny has in her time had to have difficult conversations with foster children. She will have had difficult conversations with members of her team, but we all have to at some point in our work have these challenging, difficult conversations. So we've got other non-negotiables around working together, having the right staff members with the right attitude, team around the child training, always working to permanence. I'm sure you've heard the word permanence more than once in Corporate Parenting Board, and every child can be fostered. So you've got a two-sided model there that's about the relationship between young people and key workers, those prods in the ribs, which I think go for everybody, and some of the, the absolute non-negotiables in practice. Now, this is particularly relating here to Future for Families, but I'm looking very much about rolling this ethos out into the wider children's services, into all the work that we do around, where are those prods in the ribs and where are those things that are non-negotiable in our practice. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So, opening of the service and Ofsted. Future for Families provision provisionally opened on the 3rd of August, and that was particularly the part of the service which was about providing outreach to the children and young people edging towards care. However, you probably know that to be registered, to be able to have young people stay overnight, to be accommodated by us, the service needs to be registered with Ofsted, and Ofsted completed their inspection on the 25th of August. Takes a bit of time for them to do consultation, to do the paperwork. So they officially registered the building on the 7th of September, and the service is now live and operational from that date and provides both the in-reach, the care for the children in the hub and the outreach support. So whoop whoop, it's extraordinarily exciting that this is now online. And I'm the project sponsor, so I'm allowed to be very, very proud of it. And I know that as time that you will absolutely see young children and young people's outcomes becoming improved by this particular service. Moving on. Training and development. So there's been a lot of training. I know, bringing the team around the children together to make sure that they are fully up to speed with the expectations around them and the work that we need them to do for children. And this training will be ongoing. It's very much relationship-based training. So it's about, and I think that goes back to the first slide with the hub and the two halves of the hub. And it's also very much about the language we use with and about young people. You're probably aware that I do bang on about the use of the acronym LAC, for example, and that's exactly the example that I would want to bring here. I still hear it, and when I'm out and about, and I do try very hard to push gently about using words that are that we would want to be addressed with. So. I'm sure none of us would want to be called lack. And it's about thinking about the language that we use with young people. Is it language that young people would relate to? Is it language that is child focused? Does it put the child in the center of our conversations? So in terms of, I was talking about rolling out the Future for Families ethos into the rest of the children's services. Futures for Families have already begun to support our newly qualified social workers and developing their awareness about positive relationships and the language we use when working with and describing young people. And workshops are planned with our newly qualified social workers to support them in developing their communication skills with teenagers, and how Futures for Families will support that engagement and then that preventative work. If we have relationships with the children and young people that we're working with, if we're able to grow them and support them, we know that will improve outcomes for them. So really, I can't stress enough that relationship building and the language that we use, it's of ultra importance. And it's a really precious thing to me that this Future for Families model embraces those concepts. Next slide, Susie, thank you. So already, after a very few weeks, they're supporting 6 young people to return to the care of their families or into foster placements from external residential. So if some of you will know that we have a team called Innovate on site at the moment who are focusing particularly, one of the things they're particularly focusing on is children moving on from our external residential placements, and Future for Families is right in the middle of that work, supporting these young people who are making these quite big leaps, appropriately big leaps and safe big leaps to move on from external residential placements. And also we're working with 11 young people to prevent either a breakdown in family relationships or a breakdown in foster placements or residential placements. Jenny said we don't want children and young people to have moves when they don't need to, and this is absolutely preventing those moves where they don't need to happen. On the next slide, Susie. Now, this is probably much more important and much more enlightening than me talking. 2 pictures of the hub. You can see, I think it's smashing. I think it's better than the Premier Inn, which is my current abode. And you can see it's light and airy, and should the decor should be reflecting the ethos of the hub. And then there's more pictures, further pictures of the hub. So you can see that there's both meeting and living space. It's fantastic, isn't it? Unfortunately, because of COVID, we can't do anything other than virtual tours, but I know that there is a video being put together that will take you on a virtual tour of the hub. So that might be something that we can put on a future agenda item, or whether that link can be sent out anyway, but you can see it's absolutely smashing. And then the last slide is quite simply, thank you to everyone. Thank you, and I know many of you have supported the development of Future for Families here. And if I can take any questions, I'd be pleased to.
Thank you very much for that. That's really interesting. I love those pictures. I can't wait to see the video.
I know, it's fantastic, isn't it? Really wonderful.
Looks like a lovely environment, yes. Janet Thompson, Councillor Thompson, has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask you, when any young persons have gone to the care system out the other side, do you consult with them and feedback, whether that be negative or positive, to help you in your roles? Thank you.
I'm so sorry, Councillor. You really were breaking up there. I didn't catch all of the question. I don't know whether anybody else did and can relay it to me.
I'm not
Just
very sure.
try again.
Yes, please, Janet. Yes, I couldn't quite catch it either.
Do you want to try to mute Alma, because that might be causing disturbance? It's just when any young person has gone through the care system and come out the other side, would you consult with them for feedback, whether that be negative or positive, to help you in your role? Thank you, Chair.
That's a really good question. as part, every young person, every child and young person that is in our care has regular review meetings. So, and as part of those review meetings, they do, they are asked for those views. Now that can be quite challenging for a young person to be asked and to want to contribute, but yeah, we do ask for their views. We also have, the children in care councils, for example. We also, do consult with young people. Sometimes that's about some of the work that we're doing rather than some of the work that, rather than talking to them about their own views and opinions. I do meet with young people, not as often as I'd like to, but I do meet with young people. But generally, in terms of feedback, I suppose I sometimes hear about, as a DCS, I sometimes hear about things when they're not so good rather than when they are good. But yeah, we do try whenever we can to build in that that consultation loop, as it were. But I think the more information we get on how we can improve outcomes for children who are looked after, the better. We probably need to think more about how we do that, maybe more constructively and maybe more directly. But of course, some young people don't want to talk about it, don't want to talk to another social worker, certainly don't want to talk to a director of children's services. So we have to be careful about how we do it.
Thank you, Sue. Answer your question, Janet? Yes, I think it does. Has anyone else got a question? I can't see any more hands. Is that Councillor Platt? Did you want to ask a question? I couldn't see. You're on mute at the moment. Councillor Platt, no? Anyone else got a question? So we'll be waiting for another question. Councillor Higgins, Teresa.
Afternoon, Sue. I don't know whether this question is appropriate or whether you'll be able to answer it, but I understand Ofsted has been in today. Is there any, could you tell us anything about that or not?
Sue, you're still on mute, actually. Could you unmute, please? Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Yes, of course. We are due an Ofsted monitoring visit next week on the 23rd and 24th, which is a 2-day visit. However, in the lead up to those 2 days, we have to do quite a significant amount of work. So, for example, we've uploaded to their SharePoint a whole suite of documents. We have to send audits of cases. They pick some specific cases, they have a look at them. They want to know what we are doing, particularly in terms of our status as an authority that needs a significant amount of improvement, what progress we're making. I've come off a phone call this afternoon with the lead inspector. She has been asking us some questions about some of the information that we've sent up to her, and generally talking about honing down what she might be looking at next week. So that's what I've done. They're actually on site, although it's a virtual on site with us for 2 days next week. But as I say, there's a lot of work that goes on before they start to talk to social workers. So that's what's happening at the moment. It will be really interesting to see what they say at the end of the 2-day inspection. They will write a letter that comes to us. The first one isn't published, but after that, and we will get monitoring visits every 3 months. They will subsequently be published on the Ofsted website.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Sorry, you want to...
Sorry, can I just come back in just quickly? Just to say, if there's any justice in this world, then you will get a good report, because you couldn't have done any more for the children of Middlesbrough. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Councillor Thompson, Janet, your hand.
Thank you. Can I just ask, can we have a copy of the slides, please, sent out to us?
Sue, you're on mute still.
The copy of the Futures for Families ones, Councillor Thompson. Yes, of course. I'll send them to Susie.
Thank you. That'd be great. I think that slide which shows the 2 parts of the hub and what we can't negotiate is an excellent slide in itself, actually. there must have been a lot of care and thought gone into the preparation of that slide.
Yeah, that's what I'm particularly interested in.
It's valuable, isn't it? Not only for the future for families, but in other ways, I think you could use that slide in other discussions, in other contexts. My other aspect that I wanted to pick up on, Sue, was this emphasis you put on the use of language and how important it is that we're very careful and respectful of other people. Well, should be all the time, in terms of the language we choose and the way we speak about people, and the references we make to people, in terms of relationship building, obviously, because the language we use and the deportment we have and the ways we deal with children are key. I was just thinking there must be a lot of overlap there with you, Kate, and the way that you deal with young people in your service, in terms of language, in terms of perceptions, in terms of breaking down misconceptions and misperceptions of the outside world, to give the children a more positive self-image and a more positive way of thinking about themselves and their situation. Kate, would you want to comment? And then Sue, maybe, please?
Yep, I'd absolutely echo Sue's comments in terms of the use of language is absolutely imperative, and it's our engagement tool, isn't it, with our young people? And if we don't get it right, then they won't engage with us. So yeah, we absolutely, and there's a range of ways, you know, verbal, non-verbal. There's lots of ways that we can engage and communicate with our young people. And yeah, like I said yesterday in our board meeting, we don't have a magic wand, but we do our best at all times for our young people to engage with them in the best way that we can.
Sue, do you want to pick up any more on the language? I had an idea, and I haven't quite formulated because it just occurred to me. Maybe we ought to have a little aide-memoire for people among the councillors and amongst the council about things to avoid. So, for example, you chose the acronym of the LAC. It's already an odd word because it doesn't sound like an acronym. It sounds like something's lacking. I mean, I know the acronym is LAC, but it sounds like it could be a word, you know, L-A-C-K, as if people are lacking something, you know, that you're a lack person. It's got a negative connotation as well, potentially. And I just wondered if we could together compile a list of the types of language or phraseology that we should avoid when referring to children who are in our care. And I'm sure other people could contribute to that. Sue, and then I'll take Councillor Wright. Sue, do you want to respond? And then Councillor Wright, please.
There is a document which I'll send to Susie. It's from PACT, and that's another acronym which I can't remember. But it does have a list of things that children and young people, you know, have said that they don't want to use, or they would prefer not to be used. I mean, contact. We do use the term family time here. You know, a sibling. No, it's my brother. It's my sister. It's not my sibling. You know, it's my brother or my sister. So that's the sort of language. I mean, I sort of do, the one I'm moving on to ban really is sin. A child is not sin. A child is a child in need, you know, and we use that acronym SIN quite a lot. So I think that, you know, it's some very, very basic things that help us get that right. You know, I don't want to be called, I wouldn't want a child of mine to be called a child that's sin, or a child that's lack, or I don't want actually my grandchildren to say that's my sibling. I wanted to say that's my baby sister. You know, it's those sorts of things that we probably don't think twice about, but we use the acronyms in different parts of our lives. Maybe I don't know, but I'm really quite passionate about that. But I will get this document circulated by Susie.
I think that'd be really helpful. Things that we may not have thought about, but other people have put their mind. Thanks, that'd be really, really helpful. I look forward to that. Councillor Wright, Craig, you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I wonder if this would be some good work for Beth and the Care Leavers Forum and the KIC to do as well around what language they sort of associate and what they don't want to be associated with. I met with the Care Leavers Forum again this month, and they're really passionate about becoming more involved in corporate parenting and having their voices heard across the council. And I think this would be a really powerful way to include them and hear from them directly what, you know, language is important to them.
Thank you. I think that's a really good idea, actually. It would be good to incorporate somehow how that could happen and how we could have representation at a future corporate parenting board meeting. So thank you, Councillor Wright. We'll definitely look into that. And thank you for the document, Sue. That'll be, even the document would be a good starting point, wouldn't it, with the young people, and think, ask their opinions or whatever. Anyway, there's various methodologies we could use to exploit that to the best possible use and to be aware of our use of language. Are there any more questions for Sue on the presentation, which was excellent? Thank you. We've had marvellous presentations this afternoon. I'm bowled over, really excited by all the good work that we can see that's going on across the different sectors. It's just marvellous. Thank you so much to everyone, and people like Trevor who are doing his work, and you haven't have given us a presentation today, but thank you anyway for all the work you've done, and that your team do too. We know they're making a difference. So, are there any more questions at all of anyone? Can't see any. Oh, well, thank you once again. Excellent. It's been a really exciting and informative meeting. And we've got new ideas to take forward and move into the next meetings as well, which is really important to see our development and the progression that we're going to make as a team. Thank you. So I think we're on to the final item on the agenda now. If there's any other business that we've missed or anything else that people would like to bring to our attention, any other urgent items? I haven't got any personally. I don't know if anyone else has. People, no affirmative. Pardon? Can anyone else see anyone nodding? Zafar, I still can't see you. I wouldn't like to miss you out because I missed your hand before, sorry. No. So in that case, it's probably appropriate and timely to call this meeting to a close now. Anything else, Susie, we've missed or we might need to say?
No, thank you, Chair. Just to obviously advise that the next meeting of the Corporate Parenting Board is on Wednesday, the 28th of October.
Okay, we'll get further information as and when we come to that. And we'll follow up on all of the items that we've looked at for future development in our preparation meetings and see if we can take them forward. So thanks again to all our presenters for their excellent slides, and we'll be very grateful for seeing them and they'll be sent to us. And the documents that we've been looking at with Kay in terms of the research that I asked for, and with Sue in terms of the use of language, etc. So thanks very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Good night. Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.